It is 6:47 in the morning. You are getting dressed in the dark so you don't wake the baby. Your partner is already downstairs. The bag is packed. The daycare drop-off is in 40 minutes. And somewhere between putting on your shoes and grabbing your keys, you stop, just for a second, and stand at the door of the nursery and look at the crib. Your baby is still asleep. You will not see them again until tonight. Maybe 6 p.m., maybe 7. Maybe later, if the commute runs long, or the meeting doesn't end when it should. And by then, they will already be tired, and you will be tired, and the hours between now and sleep will be the only hours you have. You close the door quietly. You go to work. You do what you have to do. And somewhere in the back of your mind, in the place where the questions you don't have time to ask live, something wonders. Is this okay? Is this enough? What is happening in my baby's brain on the days I am not there? Those questions deserve a real answer. Not reassurance, not judgment. A real answer, grounded in what the research actually says. That is what this video is. Before we go into the science, I want to ask you something that matters for how I approach this topic. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from and how old your baby is. And then tell me this: what does the morning goodbye feel like for you? Not what you say out loud, what it actually feels like when you leave. Because I ask this on every video about this topic, and what parents tell me shapes every word I write. You are not alone in what you feel, and what you share might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if you are watching this at the end of a long day, with your baby finally asleep, send this to your partner right now. Because what I am about to cover is the kind of conversation most couples never have. Not because they don't care, but because no one gave them the language to start it. The conversation about working parents and infant development has been happening in research circles for almost 40 years. And it has been one of the most politically charged, emotionally loaded areas of developmental science in that entire time. I want to tell you why. Because understanding the history makes the current data clearer. In the 1980s and early 1990s, a wave of studies suggested that extended non-maternal care in the first year of life was associated with elevated rates of insecure attachment. The headlines were stark. The cultural response was immediate. And working mothers, who were already navigating enormous social pressure, carried those findings as a private weight for a generation. Then, the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development launched the largest, most methodologically rigorous study of early childcare ever conducted in the United States. The NICHD study of early childcare followed over 1,300 children from birth through adolescence across 10 research sites. It ran for more than 15 years, and what it found was significantly more nuanced than anything that had come before. The quality of parental interaction at home was a stronger predictor of attachment security than the number of hours a child spent in daycare. That finding has been replicated multiple times across multiple countries. The question was never simply, "Are you there?" The question was always, "When you are there, what happens?" And that distinction between quantity of time and quality of presence is the thread that runs through everything the research tells us about early development in dual-income families. But there is a part of this research that rarely makes it out of the academic literature, a part that neither the daycare is fine camp nor the babies need their parents home camp talks about with the precision the data warrants. And it is the part that changes everything about how you think about the hours you do have. Let me tell you about the concept of threshold hours, because I think it is the most practically important thing I can give you from this body of research. Dr. Jean Brooks Gunn at Columbia University, one of the lead investigators on the NICHD study, identified something in the data that generated significant debate when it was published. The research found that infants whose parents, specifically mothers in the original dataset, though subsequent research extended this to primary caregivers of any kind, worked more than 30 hours per week in the baby's first 9 months, showed a small but statistically significant elevation in behavioral indicators of stress at 36 months of age. Not pathological outcomes, not permanent damage, a measurable signal, a stress indicator. And here is the critical piece that most summaries of this research omit. That signal was almost entirely mediated by what happened during non-work hours. The infants who showed the elevated stress markers were predominantly those whose caregiving environment outside of work hours was also low in responsiveness, low in physical contact, and low in what researchers call sensitive caregiving, the moment-to-moment attunement between a parent and a baby that registers, responds to, and reflects the baby's internal states. The work hours, on their own, were not the primary driver. The depletion of presence that work hours can produce when both parents are exhausted, distracted, running on reserves, unable to drop into genuine attentiveness even when physically in the same room, that was the signal the data was reading. And that is a fundamentally different problem than the one the culture has been arguing about. It is not a problem of absence. It is a problem of presence without awareness. Here is what I mean by that. And this is the science I want you to hold on to, because it is the most actionable piece of this entire video. Researchers at the University of California at Berkeley, studying the neurological underpinnings of attachment security, found that what infant brains are specifically calibrating for in the first 12 months is not the raw number of hours with a caregiver. They are calibrating for predictability and responsiveness. The developing attachment system in your baby's brain is essentially running a probabilistic model. When I signal need, do I receive a response? When I am distressed, does the environment reorganize around me? Is the world reliable? Reliability does not require constant presence. Reliability requires consistent responsiveness when presence exists. A parent who works 10 hours a day but comes home and genuinely transitions, who puts the phone down, who gets on the floor, who makes eye contact and responds to what the baby is actually doing, who is present in the neurological sense of the word, builds a more secure attachment model in their baby's brain than a parent who is home all day but functionally elsewhere. This is not a comfortable finding for anyone. It does not let anyone off the hook. It puts the hook somewhere more specific, because it means that the relevant question is not, how many hours are you away? The relevant question is, when you come back, where are you? I need to stay with this for a moment, because there is something happening in the bodies of working parents that directly affects this, and it is not discussed nearly enough in the parenting literature. Chronic work stress produces measurable elevations in cortisol. This is well established. What is less widely known is that cortisol is a socially transmissible hormone, meaning when you are in a state of physiological stress, the people in close physical proximity to you, including your baby, register that stress through multiple biological channels. Your voice pitch changes, your muscle tension changes, your responsiveness to social signals slows, your threshold for irritability drops, and your baby, whose nervous system has been calibrated across millions of years of evolution to detect precisely these signals in a primary caregiver, reads every one of them. A 2014 study published in Psychological Science found that infants as young as 6 months showed elevated cortisol responses after extended physical contact with parents who had been exposed to a social stress induction protocol, even when those parents were instructed to appear calm and engaged. The babies were reading something the cameras could not see. This is not a reason to feel worse about being stressed. Every parent is stressed. Stress is not a moral failing. This is a reason to understand that the transition between work and home, the 20 minutes between walking through the door and sitting with your baby, matters more neurologically than almost any other window in your day. Not because of what you do in it, because of what you release in it. The research suggests that even a brief physiological decompression before engaging with your baby, a few minutes outside before coming in, a deliberate slowing of breath, a moment of stillness before the door opens, measurably reduces the cortisol signal your baby will receive in the first 30 minutes of contact. This is not a wellness habit. This is neuroscience with a direct application. Your baby cannot distinguish between a parent who is emotionally unavailable because they don't care and a parent who is emotionally unavailable because they are still carrying the cortisol load of a 10-hour workday. The biological signal is identical, but you can change the signal deliberately, intentionally, in about 3 minutes. There is a second dimension to this that I find equally important and almost never covered in conversations about working parents and infant development. It is the question of what the research calls replacement care quality, the neurological and emotional environment your baby inhabits during the hours you are away. The NICHD data showed that children in high-quality childcare settings did not show the stress indicators associated with long parental work hours. What the data consistently flagged was a combination of factors: long hours in low-quality or high-ratio care environments, followed by low-presence home environments in the evenings. It was the cumulative deprivation, not the individual variable, that produced the measurable developmental signal. This matters because it reframes the entire conversation. If you are working long hours, the developmental calculus for your baby does not rest on whether you can work fewer hours. For many families in the United States, that is not a realistic option. The calculus rests on two variables you may have more influence over than you realize. The first is the quality of the care environment during the day. Not the cost, not the prestige. The ratio of adults to infants, the responsiveness of individual caregivers, the amount of language-rich interaction and physical attunement your baby receives in your absence. A 3-to-1 ratio in an infant room is neurologically different from a 5-to-1 ratio. Knowing how to assess that difference and advocating for it is one of the highest leverage developmental decisions a working parent can make. The second is the structure of the evening hours, not the quantity, the intentionality. Researchers at Brigham Young University, who studied evening routines in dual-income households with infants, found that families with predictable, low-stimulation evening sequences, consistent feeding time, bath, physical contact, brief face-to-face interaction, and early sleep showed significantly better infant sleep quality, lower behavioral reactivity, and higher attachment security scores at 12 months compared to families with unstructured, high-stimulation evenings. The babies in the structured households were not getting more time with their parents. They were getting more predictable time. And predictability, to a developing brain trying to build a working model of the world, is neurologically equivalent to safety. Natalie was 32 when she came back from maternity leave. She was a project manager. She worked long hours. She had a good daycare. She was doing, by most external measures, everything right. But when she told me about her evenings, I recognized a pattern I had seen in the research data. She came home exhausted, tried to compensate by doing as much as possible with her daughter in the 2 hours before bedtime, overstimulated them both, and then felt guilty when her daughter was overtired and inconsolable by 7 p.m. She was pouring everything she had into those hours and getting a dysregulated baby in return. And the dysregulation fed the guilt, and the guilt fed the exhaustion, and the exhaustion eroded exactly the kind of calm, attuned presence that her daughter's nervous system needed most. When Natalie shifted the approach, not the hours, not the job, but the structure and quality of the transition, her daughter's evening dysregulation reduced substantially within about 3 weeks. The change was not radical. It was intentional. She told me later, "I thought more was better. I thought I owed her everything I had left." And what she actually needed was a different version of me, quieter, slower, more present and less trying. That sentence is the research, compressed into one human experience. Before we close, I want to say something directly to whoever is watching this at the end of a day when you did not get it right, when you were short-tempered, when you were on your phone, when you came home still tense and your baby felt it. The research on early attachment is not a record of individual failures. It is a record of patterns. One distracted evening does not alter a developing attachment system. One difficult week does not undo months of consistent warmth. The brain your baby is building is remarkably resilient, not because nothing matters, but because what the attachment system is tracking is the pattern of your presence over time, not the quality of any single moment. Repair is built into the system. Dr. Ed Tronick's still face research showed this repeatedly. The rupture is not the damage. The repair is the lesson. When you get it wrong and then get it right, when you come back to your baby after a distracted moment and make genuine eye contact again, you are not undoing harm. You are teaching something that cannot be taught any other way. That the world is recoverable. That connection lost can be found again. That you, specifically, will keep coming back. That is not a small thing. That may be the most important thing. If someone you know is carrying the weight of this question, whether they are doing enough, whether their baby is okay, whether the life they have built can still produce the childhood their baby deserves, send them this. Not as a fix, as honest company. Because this channel exists for exactly this. Not to tell you what the perfect parent does, but to tell you what the science actually says, and let you decide what to do with it. That is the only conversation worth having. There is something Natalie told me that I keep returning to. She said that the moment she stopped trying to make the evenings more and started making them quieter, she noticed something she had been missing. In those slower, less effortful moments, the bath, the dim room, her daughter's hand around her finger, she felt something she described as actually being there. Not performing presence, not compensating for an absence, just there. And her daughter, she said, could feel the difference immediately. Babies always can. In 3 months, your baby will remember nothing of the specific hours you were gone. But the nervous system your baby is building right now, the one that will determine how safe they feel in the world, how easily they recover from stress, how deeply they trust in connection, that is being built in the moments when you are present and they know it. Not the moments you are there. That is the window that is still open, and it is open right now.